have you. Budget what he's done.
What an entry, Nilesh. Goals, like what could you ask for?
So
what
good to have
else
you
could
back.
you ask for?
Okay, I just want to establish this interesting point, Aisha and Nilesh. Nilesh, you may have just moved slightly towards me. Just want to establish it for the benefit of our viewers. Now, this is the 52-week change in the market. Budget, say budget tak. And markets have just been flat. The mid-cap index also is similar kind of a move. The small-cap index, slightly different. But the point, I guess, Aisha, Nilesh, I'm just trying to bring out here is that 2022 budget, the market expectations were high. The outperformance of 2021 was solid. Market approached the 2022 budget on a high note. Currently, the levels are the same, but the mood accepting the dhol which welcomed Nilesh, I guess from a market standpoint, is strikingly different. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I clearly think so. I think the mood last year was way more buoyant than what the mood this year is, and therefore the expectations last year were way higher. This year, the general expectations are that it might end up being a populist budget because it's a year before the general elections. Markets are a little more quieter than what they were last year. So I think all in all, the expectations, honestly, I have not seen expectations as kind of subdued in the last many years as we see them today.
So what can really change the narrative? And I must say that you're being extremely, what shall I say, somber by calling them quiet. I don't think they're quiet. It's rather brittle. At least it has been, quite rough in the month of January. What can change the temperament? Not tampering on taxes, will that do the trick for the markets right now?
I think what we need right now is a budget which focuses on jobs, a budget which focuses on creating infrastructure, and a budget which probably leaves more in the hands of the middle class. What we are beginning to see is some kind of slowdown in demand, and to revive that, we will have to leave more in the hands of the middle class, which could mean in form of maybe raising the exemption limit, the tax exemption limit. I know it's going to be challenging and tough that how do you allocate more for infrastructure, how do you allocate more for manufacturing, but I think the reality is we'll have to leave more for the middle class. And to me, that is something which would make this an extremely comprehensive and a very long-term oriented budget.
Okay, so, no, Aisha, there's just one wall, and I'm going to request my producer to file in the assumptions what we have made. These are consensus assumption on fiscal deficit, on growth, on revenue. That data point will just, come up on your screen. So what we've done is that these are consensus collated data points about the fiscal deficit, and that data point will just come up on your screen. So let's start with that data point. Fiscal deficit, anything under 6 is good news. Revenue assumption for FY24, anything between 9 to 10% realistic. That data point will just come up on your screen.
Oh, absolutely. I think if we can have a deficit below 6%, I think that's going to be music to for the markets. And of course, if revenue projections are around that number, I think that will be great. Both these two would honestly make this kind of pretty much a very, very strong budget.
Aisha?
But in particular, Nilesh, like we were chatting yesterday, you have a lot of expectations which drill down to various sectors in the markets as well. We know how the capex theme has now become so big. We know that the government is going to have its focus and thrust on healthcare, on education, but even various sectors like, if we can just have Nilesh's graphics on air as to what he's anticipating from the budget. Walk us through your list, and thereby which sectors would have sensitivity in today's trade.
So first and foremost, I clearly believe that this budget will have or should have a lot more for the infrastructure sector. We've seen areas like railways, roads, the kind of fillip that they have got. So clearly, I think boosting infrastructure, investing in infrastructure, and not just physical infrastructure, digital infrastructure, intellectual infrastructure, which is nothing but the social sectors like education, health. I think these are some of the big areas that clearly the budget will be focused on, and there's a lot more to look forward to the budget on that. The second big area is that we've seen oil and gas and alcoholic beverages are two big sectors. They're huge sectors, but they still...
Petroleum, gas, liquor under GST.
Yes.
That's your key demand, right?
These are huge sectors, and
There is a state and a central topic here.
I think our job is to look forward to it. It's obviously the finance minister's discretion to essentially whether to kind of concede to these wishes or not. But I clearly believe that these are steps which I think are now overdue. They ought to be done in the interest of the economy, in the interest of finances, in the interest of business. So I think these are some of the areas that we need to look forward to. And the third area is, I think, the surcharges and the cesses on income tax, I think are huge. I think these need to be moderated or probably best case scenario to be done away with.
Nilesh, one thing which really stood out in your budget wish list was that there was no D word, there was no disinvestment. All you said was professionalize some of the government-run companies like an FCI.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, disinvestment is something which every year we expect, and it's had kind of a mixed response or a mixed outcome. There have been some really big ticket divestments like Air India and all of that, but some of the others have pretty much been work in progress for a long period of time. So I'm not quite sure whether, I mean, yes, we can keep talking about saying there should be more disinvestment, but whether it happens or not is something which we have to see. But I think what is even more important is to professionalize some really large public sector undertakings and some large institutions that matter. For example, the Food Corporation of India. I think the food economy in India is a very, very large economy, a very large part of the economy. And I think somewhere professionalizing it, corporatizing it, and bringing it really some of the modern practices, I think will do a lot more good to the economy, to the food economy, and to farmers in general.
Before I wrap, I want to just look at two aspects here. We're going to pin it down to an individual theme or a budget stock list, menu card from Nilesh. And also I want to go back to the assumptions what we've made in terms of the consolidated numbers, the fiscal deficit number, the revenue tax number, the GDP growth number, and also the more important joker in the pack, the subsidy number. Now, before that graphic just comes up, Nilesh, what is on your budget menu card? Stock number 1, stock number 2, stock number 3.
I probably would talk more in terms of,
You know
I
what
think...
the goal was for, Nilesh.
No, clearly the infra pack clearly is the area to really watch out for. And so out there, some of the capex-oriented capital goods kind of companies is something that essentially will have a lot more in store for them from this budget. So be it railways, power, energy, transmission, these are clearly the sectors to watch out for.
Okay. So this we have is the graph of L&T in the last 52 weeks. It's already given you an appreciation of 7.25%. Does the ambit have to widen itself from L&T to even the smaller ones?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the reality is that there is a huge capex cycle which is starting to unfold. The investment cycle clearly in the last 1.5 years has really kind of in a way woken up. And in that kind of an environment, whenever there's a bull market in a sector, clearly the mid caps, small caps do always better than the large caps. We've seen this across technology in 2020, 2021, or any of the other sectors. It's clearly the mid to smaller companies which will kind of be the big outperformers in the infrastructure space.
Okay, before we wrap, gut call at 3:30, will the doles will be on or the doles will not be there based on the budget?
The doles will be on. The doles will be on, not just at the end of the budget, but I think for the rest of the year.
Okay.
High five, come on, high five.
On that note, while we play the dole, and we're going to save it for after the budget as well, fingers crossed on that.